This is FE Peer Review. The date is November the 24th, 2021. Language and ambiguity. Definitions matter. Clarity matters. But sometimes language is ambiguous, and that's okay. In the world of science, clarity is extremely important, so definitions are extremely important. In my work of architecture and structural engineering, definitions are also extremely important. It's a question of law. In the case of my work, we have legal requirements we have to meet. So, for example, if you look at the building code, you will see that there is an entire chapter that is nothing but definitions. And in that chapter, you find out things like the difference in meaning between a handrail and a guardrail, and you make sure to get it right. A handrail's got to be 32 to 36 inches above the stairs, and a guardrail has to be no less than 42. Get it wrong, and your project gets sent back from the building department, and your project's delayed, and you've got a very unhappy client. And then you've got the question of, well, how do you measure the height of a handrail or a guardrail on a staircase? Because every step is changing. So is it supposed to be stepped like the staircase or not? So what do you suppose? There's a definition for the height measurement. So yes, clarity matters in language, but language isn't always clear because people aren't always clear. They're not always clear to each other, and they're not always clear to themselves. And there's such a thing as called social usage. So FTFE put up a little note here. Remember the first time I debated Sleeping Warrior and he said Alaska wasn't part of the USA. Good times. I gave him a thumbs up and left a little comment of my own, and then I was scrolling down reading through and I saw somebody write, did he clarify that it was not part of the continental US? To which someone else responded, it most certainly is part of the continental US. It is on the same continent of North America as the rest. Well, I had to get my nose in there, and make my comment. So common usage is that Hawaii and Alaska are not part of the continental U.S., which is a phrase used to describe the 48 contiguous states. Note that I said common usage. Yes, it is part of the North American continent, but we're talking about language usage, not geography. And then I thought, before I hit the reply button, and I better look into this a bit more. So I did, and I poked around online a bit and found various usages of the terms. Well, Wikipedia says contiguous United States. These differ from the related term continental United States, which includes Alaska. So according to Wikipedia, the contiguous states are the 48, but continental United States includes Alaska. Now, that's interesting to read. However, I also want to point out that Wikipedia is not the last word on the subject or the final word, and there in fact may be no final word, which is what we are about to see. Let's take a look at the Pew Research Center. They're one of the most important polling organizations in the world. And one of the things pollsters have to do is classify their data according to location. So definitions of locations are very important to their work. So this is what Pew Research Center has to say. Somebody wrote in a question. In your descriptions about how you conduct your polls, you use the term continental United States. Does that mean you include Alaska or not? Pew Research responds, the definition of continental United States that we and most other major survey organizations use includes the 48 contiguous states, but not Alaska. And then they give the reasons why. So polling organizations have decided not to include Alaska. And Wikipedia says it does include. That's the ambiguity I'm talking about. Now, I also want to come back to common usage. All my life, as an American, I've never heard the phrase continental U.S. used in everyday conversation to include Alaska. To me, it has always been understood that it doesn't. So I would say that common usage, as I've experienced it, says, no, it's not with Alaska. On the other hand, there are definitions that say it are. So I don't think there's any right or wrong here. That's how I ended my comment. So it's not right, it's not wrong to use either definition. Sometimes language is ambiguous. It's a reflection of social customs which change over time. It's not a science. It's not always subject to the rigid natural laws, and it's not always black and white. So the final message is, it doesn't make sense to be too rigid about these things. And if your goal is to communicate successfully with the people around you and to understand the people around you, ask them what they mean when they use a phrase. Hey, did you mean to include Alaska in continental US or not? I've heard it used both ways. If you understand the other person's definition, you'll have a better chance of understanding them. Now, you might think their definition is wrong. Fine. No problem. Then you've got something to discuss. But if you don't even know what they mean by the phrase, then you can't know, whether they're right or wrong. There's just no way to move forward. You got to be able to at least understand each other's definitions, even if you disagree on the definition. I was going to end the video there, but I'm going to add an epilogue because Jay Krulevigin decided he or she needed to answer. And this is what Jay Krulevigin had to say. The first couple of paragraphs are in support of this person's insistence that continental cannot be used in the way that I said it is commonly used, and that it is wrong to use it in such a way, and Jay Krulevigin provides an argument for why it's the wrong way to use it. Now that's fine. A discussion about and a debate about what's the correct definition of a word or a phrase is perfectly fine. But that doesn't change the reality that common usage is common usage. That means that that's what people mean when they say something. Even if this person thinks they're using the words wrong, this other thing is what they mean. And that's the point of this video. So I'm going to continue on, though, because Jay Krulevigin reveals that he or she has not at all understood what I wrote. Interestingly, since this whole discussion is about language, my first two words in my comment were common usage. Common usage is that Hawaii and Alaska are not part of the continental United States. We are talking about language usage, not geography. I use that phrase again. Also, in my experience, common everyday usage is not to include Alaska. It's a reflection of social customs which change over time. Usage. So Jay Krulevigin went on to give 4 examples of common, quote, common knowledge that is not correct. Alcohol warms you, bulls hate red, you can't put a fallen bird back in the nest, hair and nails continue to grow after you die. All of these things are, quote, common knowledge, quote. I want to point out that's in quote there, but are also decidedly wrong. I am in entire agreement. They're common knowledge and they're wrong. Just like it used to be common knowledge that the earth was flat. I agree. Well, I agree with the idea that this person is saying that there are a lot of things that are commonly believed that are incorrect. But that's not what I said. I didn't say common knowledge anywhere in my comment. I said common usage, because I'm talking about how language is used. So Jay Krulevigin responded. I responded with common usage is how language changes. It is not the same thing as common knowledge. I said usage, not knowledge. What starts out as common usage often, eventually, becomes correct usage. Run that by any professor of English language or American literature, and you'll most likely find they are in agreement with the basic idea. That's also how new words enter our dictionary. Well, the details matter, don't they? Or I guess you could say this person's setting up a straw man, replacing my phrase common usage with his or her phrase common knowledge, and then arguing against the phrase common knowledge. I don't think it was an intentional straw man, though. I think it was unclear thinking. Somebody who was reading, whose mind was rushing along too fast and was reading what he or she thought I had written rather than what I actually wrote, which gets back down to communication. It's all about communication. Take the time to stop and listen to the other person and make an effort to understand what that other person means before arguing against them. Finally, I ended my comment with, you'll need to inform Pew Research Center and other polling organizations they've got it all wrong. And you'll have to get them to agree with you and change their practices before I'll concede, I had made a typo there and corrected it, that you are 100% right and I'm 100% wrong. In other words, the proof is in the pudding. Again, common usage. You're not actually going to find proof in puddings, but when the world adopts this person's insistence on the one right definition, when the world adopts that, then that will become common usage. And it'll be correct. And if I were to continue to make my claims that I have made today, at that time, I would be wrong. However, I can assure you, were that common usage, I wouldn't be making those claims. So I wouldn't make those claims in the future if that all changed. All right, enough. I'm going to get on to rambling again. So I'll say, have a great day.